5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to Suzuka Circuit. We have just finished watching the Japanese Grand Prix. Lots to talk about after that, but the big story this afternoon is that Red Bull Racing have taken the Constructors' Championship once more. 6 titles now to their name, and this, the second consecutive one. What a performance from their lead driver, Max Verstappen, winning in style ahead of the 2 McLarens. And it was Lando Norris ahead of Oscar Piastri. So we will go through the grid very shortly, but to introduce my fellow pundits who I have shared an exemplary weekend in Japan with, it's our lead commentator, Harry Benjamin, and the Neon McLaren Formula E driver, Sam Bird. It's been quite a week, hasn't it? And that's just our journey into the track.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a taste of Japan with sort of just a side of Formula One. Our attempts at understanding the Japanese public transport system have been long. But I think today on the way in, we cracked it. But it's a shame it's the last day.
Yeah, we know how to go for next year, I think.
Yeah, sorted. It's only about 5 months away.
Well, look, I have laughed lots. We've had a brilliant time. But let's talk about the Formula One. As you say, we've had a side of Formula One in addition to our Japanese experience. What a performance from Red Bull this year. We'll talk about Max's performance a little later on. But Red Bull have been incredible, totally bulletproof. Apart from last weekend, of course. It would be so easy to say that, wouldn't it? Last weekend, there was this bit of jeopardy. Were they coming undone? Was the technical directive aimed at them, that technical directive 18 with the flexi wings? And then they come to Japan a few days later, Sam, and bam, Max Verstappen straight out of the blocks, fastest in everything pretty much, and he took the win today. But what Red Bull have achieved, how different is it, do you think, this year? How much have they stepped on?
I think it's even more impressive this year than last year, and last year was impressive enough. I think everybody hyped up the Ferrari Sainz masterclass in Singapore, and was it going to be a change in form? Were Ferrari now the team to beat? Well, absolutely not. I think Max Verstappen has clearly shown that, demonstrated that perfectly clearly this weekend. He was out to prove a point, wasn't he, here? From lap 1 in free practice 1, he's been the dominant force, and it was there is no change of the guard. Max Verstappen and Red Bull are clearly still the driver and the team to beat.
And it was even Lewis Hamilton talking to me yesterday after qualifying, saying that the gap is so frightening, not just for this season, but for 2024, Harry. They are so far ahead.
I asked Sam this on the coverage. 2 world titles on the trot now. Are we at the beginning of another dominant period? You know, is this the end of 2011 again, and we're about to get another couple of years of Red Bull dominance? And Sam quite rightly said, well, we're in the midst of it already. This is it. You can't take anything away from what Red Bull have done, but it is worrying for the sport. It is, because nobody likes a runaway winner. We have had them in Formula One. It's cyclical. Look at Mercedes' dominant run. But this is different because it's one car for Red Bull. Not to do any disservice to Sergio Perez, but Max Verstappen is on another level compared to any other driver. They have the same car, and he's just able to deliver something else, and Red Bull allow him those tools to do so. And nobody can come close. There isn't the occasional win of a Ferrari or a Mercedes getting in there. Reliability also, just that car is bulletproof for Max Verstappen.
But name an era within Formula One where there wasn't a dominant car. We could keep on going back and keep on going back. The way that the rules are in Formula One, whereby basically the manufacturers are free to design their own cars with their own aero and their own engine and their own gearbox within parameters, means that one team is just going to do a better job than the other teams, and that team will win far more races than other teams. That's the way that it works. It's not like other single-seater formulas where it's a spec car with a spec engine and a spec tyre, and you go racing and it's really, really close. F1 is designed so that one team will succeed more than others, and that's the formula that we've got.
No, I completely agree with you, but what is different for this is, okay, what was the last dominant era? Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas was able to occasionally win a race. Wasn't quite there, but the battle with Rosberg, that was intense. And yeah, it was only 2 cars in the fight, but there were two cars in the fight. It wasn't.
Well, then
tense.
we need
Sebastian
Sergio
Vettel had
Perez
Mark
to
Webber.
do
Well,
a better
this is
job.
the thing.
We need Sergio to up the game. At the beginning of this season, we all thought, wow, Sergio's come out the blocks well, and he won 2 out of the first 4 or 5 races. Now, that was close. That was great for Formula One. Since then, he hasn't shown up.
Then he crumbled. And that's the difference. That's what outlines, to come back to your original question, Rosanna, I think that's what outlines this as more dominant than other previous stints, is that it's Max out there on his own. He'd already won the Constructors' title as himself. He didn't need a teammate.
Well, his teammate didn't finish today. We had a weird scene, didn't we? He
And isn't that a
retired.
metaphor?
Yes, exactly. Slightly summarises the season. He retired, then we saw him getting back in the car because he'd been given a penalty, so he had to go out and serve that, and then he retired again. So not able to take the checkered flag this afternoon, and it was Max Verstappen just out there on his own for Red Bull. But what a moment for the team. I managed to grab Christian Horner just as he stepped off the pit wall, and this is what he had to say to me.
Amazing. I mean, what a race for Max. It's completely dominant, and he just blew it out of the park this weekend. I mean, the lap yesterday, the race today, amazing.
Being congratulated by Fred Vasseur, of course, one of the competitors this year. But what do you say to your competitors come 2024?
Well, look, we're just going to enjoy the moment. It's been an incredible moment for the whole team, and just incredibly proud of everybody back in Milton Keynes and the whole team doing an amazing job to produce such a great car.
You got the T-shirts here, I'm sure, already packed, ready to wear.
Yes, I'm sure there are somewhere. I don't believe in things like that until it's done. So,
Well, it is now. Congratulations. Enjoy your celebrations.
thank you very much.
That was Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull Racing, and that team are going to be celebrating, I think, this evening, whether that's in Tokyo or on a flight home. 623 points. That's how many they have. Mercedes on 305, so now unable to chase them or catch them. And it will be Red Bull who take the Constructors' Championship in 2023. So we've spoken about their lead driver, Max Verstappen, and how he has been in another league, on another planet, however you want to describe it. It's his turn next, isn't it? Next weekend, or the next weekend that we race in Qatar. We'll talk about the sort of permutations of that a little later on in the pod, but it's just a matter of time before he puts that second hand on the trophy, isn't it, Sam?
It's been a matter of time for the last couple of months, really, ever since he probably once he got to like 5 wins in a row, it was like, well, this is done now. Sergio Perez is not going to find the form to get those points back. No other car is really strong enough, so it's been a matter of time for a while. He fully deserves it. He's been the class of the field. Going back to Sergio Perez, though, he's still second in this world title. So, yes, it's been disappointing from him, but he's still second. And that's how dominant Red Bull have been this year. The fact that somebody can have such a disappointing year, yet still come runner-up in the World Championship is quite something special by Red Bull.
And that's never been done by Red Bull Racing
That's
before.
the crazy thing,
I
right?
know. So he's doing exactly what they needed him to do. It's just there have been some lows, there have been some retirements, there have been some silly mistakes, some moments in the wall and the gravel. And when you've got a car like that, which, as you said, Harry, has been bulletproof and Max Verstappen seems to have no issues with, it's so odd that just on the other side of the garage, all these mistakes keep on happening. It's the pressure. Do we feel almost now that the championship, the team's championship's won, and perhaps once the driver's championship is sealed by Max, suddenly Sergio's, we sometimes see, don't we, in the final races of a season when the championship's wrapped up, will suddenly come into his own and he'll be all
Minister of
relaxed
Defence
and
in
he'll be,
Abu Dhabi
and
once
he'll be
more.
absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, looking at today's race, I mean, a couple of the moves, that move down the inside of the hairpin on Kevin Magnussen, at the time, you know, it seemed like, oh, why has he done that? You know, you were going to get him eventually, and it was a bit of a late lunge. There was a bit of a gap, and he got a penalty for it. But, you know, he's made that move before in years gone by, and it's worked. We've seen other drivers do that move. So now look back at it and go, maybe it was a little bit unlucky. He got caught up in that collision. Magnussen did close the door, and you are up against Kevin Magnussen, who is not afraid to get his elbows out. So, you know, he has had a bit of bad luck and misjudgment.
I wouldn't say it was unlucky. He locked up and he made a mistake. He ran into the back of Kevin Magnussen. Like, yeah, Magnussen is a driver that fights hard and sometimes takes it possibly too far, but that's all Sergio.
No, I agree, but I'm comparing it like for like with an overtake he did back, you know, over 10 years ago, back in 2012. At that very point in the track, Perez comes locked up in a Sauber, Hamilton's around the outside, and he sort of barged his way through and got it done. Even there was a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact. So it's not like it was a it was an over-ambitious move, but I don't think it was a like-for-like
I
stupid
suppose. But that move that he
overtake.
made in 2012 down the inside of Lewis, he was tighter to the inside, and he got it stopped and actually followed the apex curb round. This time, he's locked up and just gone straight on. So there were differences there, and that lock-up was more severe today.
Yeah, I think a word as well, just on Red Bull, has to go to their chief technical officer or designer, Adrian Newey. I mean, another World Championship title, 12, I think he's now achieved overall. There's talk of who's the GOAT of Formula One, who's the greatest of all time. It's not a driver, it's Adrian Newey.
Well, some people might disagree with you. Let's hear from potentially a contender, Max Verstappen, your winner in Japan and helping his team take the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, I think it was a good race. Of course, the start was a bit tight in the first two corners, but after that, the car was very nice to drive again. I could really look after the tyres well. The degradation was quite in control. Of course, I knew that our strategy was going to be a little bit different with the medium tyres compared to 2 times hard for some others. But it was still okay, I think. The balance was still quite okay. Traction and stuff for the whole stint. Honestly, like no real issues throughout the race. And I think that just sums up the weekend as well. It's just been an incredible weekend to drive the car.
And what about this Constructors' Championship, Max? The team has won it with 6 races to go. Does this title feel different to last year?
Yeah, it's better for sure. I mean, the car has been more dominant this year, apart from Singapore, but all the other races that, we've had a really, really good car. And it's just an incredible season for everyone involved, within the team. And just very proud to be a part of it, but also very proud, to be working with all these amazing people here at the track, but also especially back at the factory as well. These people you might not see at the track, but they are doing also a lot of hard work, to make sure that our cars always are in the best shape, get developed, throughout the year, and also be best prepared for the year after.
That was Max Verstappen, who looks set to take the driver's title in a couple of weeks' time. Behind him, it was Lando Norris who took the checkered flag to finish second. He didn't start from second, started from third, was obviously frustrated that his rookie teammate Oscar Piastri had out-qualified him. What do you make of McLaren's performance this weekend? Because they were definitely ahead of Ferrari. A lot of people billing Ferrari as the biggest threat to Red Bull this weekend off the back of an amazing performance in Singapore. But McLaren coming out on top, Sam, and I have to look to you to talk about McLaren's success this weekend as a newly signed McLaren Formula E driver.
Yeah, really pleased for McLaren, especially you look at where they've come from at the beginning of the year. They were nowhere. And it took until Austria for them to get the car together a little bit better. Silverstone came along and they start getting podiums. And now I think Lando's had 4 podiums in 7 races, 3 of which are second places. And Oscar Piastri getting his first podium today. I actually think Lando was a little bit unlucky today. I think the gap to Max Verstappen was a little bit flattering. Sergio Perez, under the virtual safety car, was driving around at some strange, very slow pace, which cost Lando up to and around 9-10 seconds. Now, I think he finished 18 seconds behind Max. If he'd been 5-6 seconds behind with 10 laps to go, that would have put a little bit of pressure on. Okay, Max would have still won, I'm sure, but it's a different kind of pressure. If a car's within 4, 5, 6 seconds, you're thinking, you can see him, you can try and hound him down.
Yeah, and Lando Norris was talking about that incident with Sergio Perez, saying I was screaming in my helmet, shouting, wondering what was going on. Well, let's hear how he sounded at the end of the race. P2 for Lando Norris today in the McLaren.
It was a great race. My pace was very, very strong today. We're on different sequences of pit stops, Oscar and myself. But we ended P2 and P3, and I think that's where we should have been. So I'm very happy for the whole team. Great day, great pace. I think, if I had terrible pace, I probably wouldn't be as happy, but I think the pace was relatively good comparing to Max. It wasn't an easy one for him. It wasn't like he could do anything, I think there was still just a little bit of pressure in the back of his mind. So I think, a good day. I was pushing pretty much the whole way from start to finish. I didn't have one easy moment because I wanted to see how close I could get to Max if he ever made a mistake and things like that. So still tough, especially around here. It's never an easy one, but a very, very good day for us.
It does feel like you're getting closer. How much closer do you think you can get before the end of this season? And then what does that mean for 2024, do you think?
It just depends on circuit. I mean, we're going to have some races where we're going to be slower than Mercedes, slower than Ferrari. Like, it's been a very good circuit for us. It's probably been a bad one for Mercedes if you look at it that way. And Ferrari won last weekend, so it's not like we're easily P2. And we've not made any changes from here to Singapore. And there we got out qualified by a good amount of cars. So, there's still going to be tougher races. This one was very good for us, for a very good circuit for us, and we maximised it. But there's going to be other ones. We're not going to be as quick. We might not get a podium, and those are the places we've got to work on.
Well done. Thank you so much. So Lando Norris finishing ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri, and we've spoken about this potential needle developing between these two teammates. They assure me, Zach Brown, their CEO at McLaren, assures me that all is well, it's all great. They've got two teammates that are pushing each other hard, and Lando's alluded to that Oscar's been pushing him, and I don't know, all I can think of is maybe a game of tennis. If you play with someone better than you, it raises your game, and maybe we're actually going to see a better Lando Norris, we'll see a better Oscar Piastri, and McLaren are going to come out on top because they've got some of the best drivers on the grid. But you said in the qualifying pod yesterday, Harry, that, can you have two great drivers in a team battling? And we know how McLaren have gone in the past with two greats.
Well, exactly. I think Lando referred to that, didn't he? He said, if Oscar can do the Prost Senna trick from the late 80s, then that would be great. I did say that, and there was a bit of friction over the team radio. Piastri had a great start, looked like he could challenge for the lead, but then got squeezed by Verstappen, and while they two were figuring themselves out, Norris was able to sweep around the outside and get in front of Piastri. But then Piastri got back in front after the pit strategy played itself out. But Norris had the better race pace, and there was a bit of toing and throwing for about a lap and a half, something like that, of Lando trying to get the cars inverted and swap position, and Piastri didn't roll over. Let's remember, he's a rookie as well. He's very much the junior member of that team. But he didn't want to just slide out of the way and let Lando Norris through. He really stuck to his guns. He did eventually half let Norris through at the end of the main straight into turn one. But Norris really had to come on the radio and keep kicking the team into going, what's he doing?
Yeah, I like that. I'm working on it, the race engineer saying, I'm working on it. So I think you probably just need to tap the guy next door to say, can we just switch the drivers, please? So it was Oscar Piastri coming home P3, his first podium in Formula One. Let's hear how he found the experience.
It's a very special feeling. I think, being able to do it in front of so many fans is a bit different to any other podium I've been on before. So, no, very, very happy and a special day.
Did your mum get the flight over in the end?
No, she didn't. I think she was... I'm not sure how she would have coped being at the track, but no, I'm sure they all watched from Australia. It's a good time zone for them here. It's only 1 hour behind Australia, so I'm sure they all enjoyed.
Well played on that. In terms of the race pace, it did seem like you were struggling a little bit. What do you put that down to? Is it something that's going to continue as a bit of a trend, do you think?
I hope it doesn't continue as a trend. Of course, it's something I'm trying to work on and learn from. I think it's the newest thing for me to try and get used to, and the most difficult in F1 because you can't practice it without doing the races. So still definitely some things to learn from. But yeah, I think the end of the race thing was a little bit more competitive. So try and dive into what I could do better and try and improve next time.
Well, enjoy the celebrations as well.
I will.
Congratulations.
Cheers.
That was Oscar Piastri having a chat with me in the media pen, and I just find it astounding. If we go back, where are we? 6 months maybe, to McLaren at the launch, to their first couple of races of 2023. So terrible, but so honest. I always think that was amazing, how honest they were. Andrea Stella coming out saying we've gone in the wrong development direction. The turnaround has been incredible. Can we see them fight for a win towards the back end of this season, Sam?
Given the dominance of Red Bull, can I see anybody realistically winning another race? I know Ferrari managed to get one, but looking at the circuits that we've got lined up ahead of us, no, I can't realistically see anybody fighting. I think teams now will be focusing quite a bit on next year's car and next year's car development. I think that the major updates would have probably happened by now. So I can't really see McLaren or Ferrari or Mercedes fighting too hard with Red Bull, but I definitely think more podiums are on the cards. I think Aston Martin will be looking over their shoulders in the fight for fourth in the constructors, because I think McLaren, if they continue to get both cars in the top 3 or 4, because Stroll isn't going to be scoring many points, if any, until the rest of the year, so Fernando's out there on his own, McLaren could more than likely catch and hopefully overtake Aston Martin.
Yeah, at the moment, Aston Martin on 221 points, McLaren with 172, so it's definitely possible. And you mentioned Lance Stroll, another DNF for him today. We will hear from the Mercedes drivers a little later on and talk about the rest of the grid after a short break. We're still in the Formula One paddock here in Suzuka as the F1 circus starts to pack down and head home. We're just watching Kevin Magnussen wheeling his suitcases out of the paddock. He's obviously keen to get out of here.
He's on the 7-Eleven back to Nagoya like us, I think.
He finished P15 today, so a disappointing day for Haas. His teammate Nico Hülkenberg a little further up the road in P14. Let's go back towards the front of the grid then, and it was P4 for Charles Leclerc ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. And then behind Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and then the Mercedes of George Russell. So sort of Ferrari, Mercedes club sandwich is what I'm going to call it. Yes.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the Mercedes team, I think. We know that Ferrari weren't able to challenge McLaren. We thought they might be. But Mercedes had an interesting team dynamic this afternoon. A lot of sort of team orders, moving people around, George on a one-stop. There was a lot at play this afternoon. What did you make of it, Harry?
George was on the wrong strategy at the end, wasn't he? One stop, tried to make it work, and ran out of speed in that hard compounder tyre, and was a bit of a sitting duck. The battle between the two teammates, well, they had their elbows out from the very start of this race.
You
really.
enjoyed it, didn't you?
Yeah, I loved it. It was brilliant. And considering, I think I said it on the coverage as well, it was a bit Noah's Ark-y for a while. It was not too many battles happening. It was 2 by 2 by 2. And they weren't mingling. You know, it was 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris, 2 Mercedes. But then the 2 Mercedes were Hamilton and Russell forcing each other out wide in Spoon, Hamilton pushing Russell out, and then Hamilton himself going out over the curb around that double long left-hander. And then the end, where Russell is clinging on for dear life, Hamilton is right up behind him, and he's bringing Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari as well. They're on fresher rubber than George Russell. Russell's trying everything in the book to stay in front of Hamilton. Let's work as a team. Even bringing up the DRS trick that Carlos Sainz tried last time around.
I love how Carlos Sainz had the bandwidth to be across that, to be like, oh, they're trying to do what I did last time out. They've got my trick. I like it.
And you know what? I think Mercedes weren't quick enough to act there, because they should have swapped them round quicker. And then they should have then already, as soon as Hamilton went through, he should have known right then and then, okay, I've got to stay with Russell, keep him within DRS so that he could keep Sainz behind. By the time that message got relayed to Lewis, it was too late. He'd already gone a bit up the road. He dropped back a bit so Russell could get the DRS, but it was too late. Plus his bad tyres. He got a bad run out of the final corner. Sainz lighted up within the Casio triangle and got the move done before Russell even had a chance to try something against Sainz. And Russell sounded annoyed over the radio, but those two are usually quite good at playing the game. So,
okay, it's a 7th place instead of a 6th place. I mean, if this
but
was
it's
for,
more than
if
that.
this was
it's
for the podium, yeah,
battle.
I get that. But the fact that it's for a slightly lower position reduces the niggle that they might have. If that was for a win or for a podium, and they've missed out on a podium because of that, it's a different kettle of fish. I think that you're right. They should have done it earlier, but they're racing drivers. They want to fight for every position. You can't tell me that George is going to just, of course, Lewis, just cruise by me and then I'll sit there. You don't have that train of thought all the time. It was different for Carlos Sainz in Singapore.
Unless you're Carlos Sainz.
No. But it was different for him because he was leading. It's different if you're fighting with your teammate.
Well, let's hear from the Mercedes drivers. Let's hear their side of the story. We'll hear from both of them, starting with Lewis Hamilton.
For sure, we'll talk offline. That's the best way always to do it. Our ultimate goal is to try and get ahead of the Ferraris, and that's what my goal was today. And it's to beat the Ferraris in the Constructors' Championship. That's all that matters. We're not fighting for driver's position in championship, because firstly we're not close, and secondly we're not fighting for the championship. So now it's about just getting the maximum points for the team, and I think that's what we did in the end.
It was all good. We're both professionals, and we know the boundaries of racing, especially when it comes to one another. We fight hard, but I think fair as well. And it's all part of racing. We're both battling for that, for the highest position, especially in stint 1, because whoever's ahead gets the priority of the pit stop. But ultimately, I still think I'd have gone for the one-stop strategy, because I felt good with my tyres. I felt really fast at the beginning. It's a shame we lost a bit of overall race time when I was stuck behind Lewis. But in the end, P5, P7 is a fair representation of where the car was this weekend.
When the direction came to switch, did you feel the team was supporting you enough this afternoon?
No, I think it was, there's obviously concerns of science behind, and at the end of the day, we need to score the maximum points possible. I think for me personally, the Drivers' Championship's totally out of the window this season. The objective is to finish P2 of the teams ahead of Ferrari. When you've been pushing and every single lap trying to make a suboptimal strategy work, you're hot, you're fatigued, you're tired, it's the end of the race. You use that team radio sometimes to get out some frustration. But from my side, I'm drawing on the positives from the race today. The pace was good, and on to the next one.
Absolutely. It's funny, when I talk to George Russell about close calls with Lewis Hamilton, he has a bit of a kind of sort of little smile, almost a bit giggly. It's almost like he can't believe that, and I get this might sound too much and too emotional, but almost that little George Russell who used to think about racing in Formula One day and stood in the queue for an autograph or a picture with Lewis Hamilton all those years ago, and you've, I'm sure, seen the wonderful photograph of that. Almost still can't quite believe he's teammates with Lewis Hamilton and he's forcing him wide and causing some trouble out on track. It's quite nice to see that in a racing driver.
It's a nice round moment, isn't it, for a full circle moment for George Russell. Unfortunately, thinking bigger picture, he's waited ages for this chance in Mercedes. He's been racing around at the back with Williams, beating Kubica, Latifi. Then he gets his shot.
And it's a dud.
Mercedes muck up the regulations. And it seems to only be getting worse. Lewis Hamilton with some punchy comments this weekend, saying I'm going to have to go to the factory to see what they're doing in the wind tunnel, if they are listening to me. Because right now, it sounds like Lewis Hamilton is not being listened to by the Mercedes designers. They've told them categorically what they want in terms of the drivers. And it sounds like they're not getting that as quickly as they would like. But then Mercedes saying, look, we are going to change the car concept. What we have now, nothing to be nothing like this for 2024. But they still don't have a baseline, really. If they're going to change everything up for 2024, it's still a 50-50 gamble.
You're right, Harry, and it can go one or two ways, and we'll only find out when we get to Bahrain for the test in 2024. And by then, it'll probably be too late. In terms of the future races, the races that we've still got on the calendar, of course, we go to Qatar next, then we've got Austin. There are going to be tracks, I guess, that suit them more, because I think this track was definitely one that wasn't up their street, whereas Singapore was better for Mercedes. So is it, again, this sort of circuit-specific element, Sam?
I think it is circuit-specific. I think clearly they don't fully understand the car that they've got underneath them, and it is a very difficult car to drive. I also think that they are very dependent on the grip level of the circuit. So Singapore is a street circuit which gives off slightly lower grip. You can run higher downforce there because of that, and that was more suited to the Mercedes car. I think here, higher macro roughness, higher lateral loading, more change of direction corners doesn't suit the Mercedes car at all.
Well, they'll hope they can reset and come back fighting for maybe podium positions in Qatar in a couple of weeks' time. Behind them, Fernando Alonso, then Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Double points finish for Alpine, although Pierre Gasly was a little bit cross that they did the inversion of the drivers right at the last minute. But Esteban Ocon saying that ever since he's been at Alpine, that's the rule. If you switch early on in the race and you don't make up the places, you have to give the place back to your teammate. So I'm sure there'll be a little debrief. That's what Pierre was alluding to anyway in the media
That sounds like such a sibling squabble, doesn't it?
You can have the toy for a little bit, but then you got to give it back to your brother or sister. Well, Liam Lawson finishing just outside the points, but crucially ahead of his teammate for now, Yuki Tsunoda, who finished 12th in front of his home crowd. Another great performance from Liam Lawson, and of course still hunting for a seat in 2024. Looks like the Williams seat could be coming towards him. We'll say where Logan Sargent finished in a second. Then it was Zhou Guanyu, P13, ahead of Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. Our non-finishers, Alex Albon, Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. In a season where we've had such great sort of attendance at the checkered flag, suddenly everyone was finishing. It was a race of attrition.
Yeah, 15 cars at the end, and a double DNF for Red Bull. But both of them came from Sergio Perez.
That was so strange.
So very odd.
When I saw him getting back
race
in the car, I was like, what on earth's going on? Went to talk to the team, and of course it was to serve that penalty. But yes, very strange scenes. Logan Sargent, a really difficult weekend yet again, and I alluded to it. Liam Lawson doing everything right in terms of this being a job interview. Could he get that Williams seat come 2024? Let's go back to the top story then. Red Bull Racing taking the Constructors' Championship once again in formidable style. And again, it's slightly all resting on Max Verstappen's shoulders. But what a moment. You could see how much it meant to the team. I'm sure you guys were looking out of the commentary box. I was down in the pit lane. People just legging it. I mean, rivaling Usain Bolt's 100 metres just to get to the podium to be part of it. The Red Bull team all with a smile on their face. Probably some bonuses coming their way. But what a performance. They have pulled together, and with so many races remaining, just incredible.
I mean, as an outsider who's not a part of the Red Bull team, just seeing them all celebrate together, we all knew they were going to win it, but I think the actual release of them clinching it and the teamwork and the camaraderie, it just seems like an amazing place to be. I mean, Sam, you've been a part of team celebrations and wins. What's it like from within the team? It must be something special.
It's incredible. You understand when you're part of the team just how hard everybody is working. All the weeks, months that the sleepless nights, how hard the mechanics, the engineers, everybody back at the main base is working so that I can get in my race car, or whoever can get in their race car and try and do the job. It's not just the racing driver delivering on the day, it's the hundreds and hundreds of people behind the scenes, and all of them deserve a massive pat on the back, because Red Bull, over the last couple of years, all the team back in Milton Keynes, have done an incredible job as well.
That's the point, isn't it? What we see at the track and what people see at home on the television is the tip of the iceberg, and this Constructors' Championship means so much, mainly from a financial point of view as well, doesn't it?
And also making a point, I think, this weekend with the pace, how we'd spoken about this technical directive that was brought in ahead of Singapore to clamp down on flexi wings. And then suddenly the drop-off in pace for Singapore, well, I think they've dismissed all sorts of rumours that could possibly be a thing that was affecting Red Bull. But yeah, I mean, we can say, and we have said, when there is such dominance, it does make races boring. It can make races boring. We didn't see Verstappen much in that race because he was so far ahead of the field. But you can't, at the end of the day, take anything away from what they've achieved. They've absolutely smashed these technical regulations in a time where we have to work within a cost cap now. And I know there's a lot of people with opinions on that.
They have struggled with that in the past.
Yes, exactly. But, and they got a slight penalty for it. And obviously when they win, when you finish at the top of the stands, you get the least amount of time for development in a wind tunnel for next season's car. So let's see how that plays out over the course of the next 3 or 4 seasons. I know we're thinking a bit long term here, but I can't see them stopping this dominance anytime soon next year. The closest right now looks like it's going to be McLaren, and they're still a long way off.
The scary thing is, I just did a silly little bit of maths 20 minutes ago. So if Red Bull are this dominant for the next 5 years, and if Max Verstappen is this dominant for the next 5 years, and Mercedes are still not finding form or winning races, Max Verstappen, within 4 to 4.5 seasons, will have caught and overtake Lewis Hamilton in terms of most wins ever in Formula One. And he won't have even reached 30 years old yet.
Cripes, I feel like I'm underachieving.
He turns 26 next weekend as well. So on this weekend, he's just got the team's title, and because basically that's his title as well. Has his birthday. Then it's Qatar, where he'll win the driver's title. Nice little birthday week.
That's based on 12 to 13 wins a season.
which we know he may get more in a season. Good, lovely, excellent. In terms of when he takes it during the Qatar race weekend, there is a slight fear, I'm going to say, thought that it might be during the sprint. Is that an anticlimactic finish to the driver's title?
Yes, it is.
At least we know it sooner.
But the thing is, at least it's not a fight between two drivers going down to the wire and it's clinched in the sprint in Brazil or something like that, you know. So we all know it's coming. It is in Qatar. I believe, having done the maths and spoken to other people to back up my maths,
a lot of maths going on here, guys.
Maths. I'm not quick maths is not my thing, but I think it's Perez needs to outscore Max Verstappen by 5 points in the sprints in Qatar, which essentially means Max Verstappen is going to win the championship in Qatar.
To take it to the Grand Prix on the Sunday.
Correct.
Yes. Right. Well, that is where we meet again in Qatar. That's the next stop on the calendar. Red Bull leaving Suzuka Circuit, champions of the world. We will see if Max can wrap things up in Qatar, be that in the sprint or in the Grand Prix. Guys, what a pleasure it has been to share this weekend with you. Sam Bird,
It's
Harry
been
Benjamin.
fun.
It has, hasn't
It's been fun. I've enjoyed our travelling.
I have never laughed so much during a week.
Neither has Rosanna.
away.
I have cried tears of laughter every day. It has been fantastic. Love a laugh. I think we've got more laughs coming our way. We've got the bullet train this evening to head back to Tokyo to then get our flight tomorrow. Basically, plenty more chances.
I've got to haggle for a refund from somewhere as well. So that's another thing to tick off the list.
It's been one of those weekends, but a great one. A great one. Thank you so much for being my travel buddies. Thank you for listening to the Chequered Flag podcast. We'll talk to you again in Qatar. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.